You're being incredibly selfish, Audrey. Julian is dead. Crying over a plot of dirt won't pay for Tiffany's catering deposit. Now, do you have the insurance check? Or are we going to have a real problem? I stopped dead in my tracks. The mud from Julian's grave was still wet on my boots, staining the ivory carpet of the bridal suite. But I didn't care. I slowly looked up at my mother, Eleanor. She was calmly dabbing her lipstick, looking at me through the mirror like I was an unwanted stain on her perfect afternoon. Excuse me? My voice wasn't a whisper. It was a low, dangerous growl. Say that again. Say it to my face, not the mirror. Eleanor turned, her eyes cold. You heard me. The funeral is over. It's time to talk about the living. The living? I let out a sharp, mocking laugh that echoed off the gold-leafed walls. You mean the vultures? Because that's all I see in this room. Watch your mouth, Audrey, my father, Harrison, barked from the bar. He slammed his scotch glass down. We've been patient. We let you play the grieving mother for 2 years while that boy drained our emotional reserves. But $2.5 million is sitting in your account now. That money belongs to the Sterling name, not to a dead child's memory. I marched straight into his space, ignoring the smell of expensive liquor on his breath. I was shorter than him, but in that moment, I felt 10 feet tall and made of pure fire. That boy? You mean Julian? Your grandson? The one who asked for you every night for a month while his lungs were failing? You didn't show up once, Harrison. Not once. We were busy securing Tiffany's future. Tiffany chimed in from the velvet sofa, not even looking up from her iPad. Do you have any idea how much the West family expects from us? If this wedding fails because we couldn't clear the venue deposit, it's on you. You're holding our lives hostage for a kid who isn't even here anymore. I spun around to face her, around to face. He isn't here because he died in pain, Tiffany. While you were picking out silk linens, I was holding him through seizures. And we were suffering the social consequences. Tiffany snapped, finally standing up. She grabbed a cream-colored envelope from the table and shoved it toward my chest. Here, read it and weep. It's an invoice. We've itemized everything your tragedy cost us. I snatched the paper, my eyes scanning the lines of elegant calligraphy. Loss of luxury travel opportunities during Julian's crisis. $150,000. Emotional distress for the bride-to-be. $250,000. Reputational damage due to family gloom. $100,000. The total was circled in blood-red ink. $850,000. You're billing me for my son's cancer? I felt the rage boil over, a hot, liquid adrenaline. I ripped the paper into a dozen pieces and threw them into Tiffany's shocked face. You think you're owed for your suffering? You didn't suffer, you calculated. You sat by his hospital bed counting the days until you could cash in on his death. Audrey, enough! Eleanor hissed, stepping between us. We've spoken to our lawyers. In this state, children have a legal obligation to support their parents if they are in financial need. We are declaring ourselves indigent. We will sue you for every dime of that insurance. We will garnish your wages, freeze your assets, and drag your name through the mud until you're as broke as the day you were born. Indigent? I looked at her diamond necklace, then at the $5,000 champagne on ice. You're wearing a house around your neck, you hypocrite. It's about the image, you fool. Harrison sneered. The court won't see the diamonds. They'll see 2 aging parents abandoned by their wealthy, spiteful daughter. We will win. We always win. I felt a cold, sharp clarity wash over me. The tears were gone, replaced by a lethal focus. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, ending the recording that had captured every disgusting second of their greed. Is that so? I leaned in close to Harrison, my voice dropping to a deadly skin-crawling calm. Then let the games begin, because I'm not the scared little girl you used to bully anymore. I've watched my son face death with more dignity than all three of you combined. You want to sue me? Do it. But by the time I'm done with you, the West family won't just cancel the wedding. They'll blacklist the Sterling name from every club in the country. You wouldn't dare, Eleanor gasped, her face turning pale. Watch me, I spat. I'm going to spend every cent of that $2.5 million making sure you end up exactly where you belong, in the dirt. But unlike Julian, nobody's going to visit your graves. I turned on my heel, the heavy doors slamming behind me like a thunderclap. I didn't walk. I marched. As I hit the rainy parking lot, I was already dialing Marcus Thorne. Marcus, I said, my voice steady as stone. The vultures just tried to bite. It's time to cut off their wings. I want everything. I want their bank records, their secret debts, and I want a front row seat when they lose it all. We're going to war. The engine of my SUV hummed a low, aggressive tune as I sat in the darkness of the Grand Oak Country Club parking lot. 45 minutes ago, I was standing over a grave. Now, I was staring at the glowing golden windows of a ballroom where my family was celebrating a union built on the blood of my son. My phone buzzed. A text from Eleanor. Don't be late, Audrey. The Wests are asking for you. Fix your face and bring the documents. Don't make us do this the hard way. Hard way? I whispered to the empty car, a jagged smile touching my lips. You have no idea. I didn't change my clothes. I didn't wipe the cemetery mud from the hem of my coat. I wanted them to see it. I wanted the stench of the earth to follow me into their pristine world of silk and lies. I stepped out of the car, my heels clicking like a countdown on the pavement. As I entered the lobby, the valet winced at my appearance. I ignored him, pushing through the heavy oak doors into the main hall. The air smelled of expensive lilies and roasted garlic. Laughter drifted from the ballroom. Airy, hollow laughter from people whose biggest worry was the vintage of their wine. I found them in a private alcove near the bar. Harrison, Eleanor, and Tiffany, looking like a portrait of American royalty. My God, Audrey! Eleanor hissed, lunging forward to grab my arm. Her fingers dug into my skin. You look like a vagrant. We have the Wests here. Julian's father is looking for you. I shoved her hand off with a force that made her stumble. Don't touch me, Eleanor, and don't you dare bring up Julian's name in this house of cards. Where is the check? Harrison demanded, stepping in front of me to block the view of the guests. He looked like a man about to lose his mind, or his fortune. We've already promised the venue expansion deposit. Tiffany's future depends on that money being cleared tonight. The money is gone, I said, my voice loud enough to make a nearby waiter pause. Tiffany's head snapped toward me, her eyes widening. What do you mean, gone? You can't just spend $2.5 million in 3 hours. I didn't spend it. I leaned in, my face inches from hers. I could see the panic behind her heavy mascara. I've moved it. It's in a locked trust that you can't touch. And every cent you try to claw out of me through your pathetic filial law threats will be spent on the most expensive legal team in the state just to keep you in court until you're bankrupt. You spiteful bitch, Tiffany whispered, her voice trembling with rage. Do you know what the West will do if they find out we're broke? They'll dump me. I'll be a laughingstock. Good, I snapped. Maybe then you'll understand what a real tragedy looks like. You sent me an invoice for my son's cancer, Tiffany. Did you think I'd just pay it and thank you for the service? Then lose it, I said, my voice cold as the rain outside. Sell the house. Sell your Scotch collection. Sell Eleanor's jewelry. I don't care if you end up under a bridge. Julian died in a hospital bed while you were worried about your social standing. Now, you're going to find out exactly what it's like to have no standing at all. Eleanor let out a sharp theatrical sob, looking around to see if anyone was watching. How can you be so heartless? We're your parents. Parents? I laughed, and the sound was devoid of any warmth. A parent doesn't charge their daughter for the time she spent grieving. A parent doesn't skip their grandson's funeral to taste wedding cake. You aren't parents. You're predators. I turned to leave, but Harrison grabbed my shoulder, his grip bruising. You aren't going anywhere until you sign the transfer papers. We have a notary in the back room. You're going to sit down, sign, and shut up. I looked down at his hand, then back up at him. I didn't flinch. Take your hand off me, Harrison, or the next call I make isn't to my lawyer. It's to the police, and I'll make sure the Wests hear every word of the report. You've made a mistake, Audrey, he hissed. We'll ruin you. You're too late, I said, adjusting my coat. I'm already ruined, and that's what makes me dangerous. The morning sun over Boston was blinding, reflecting off the steel and glass skyscrapers with a clinical coldness that matched my mood. I stood in the elevator of the Thorne and Associates building, watching the floor numbers climb. My reflection in the polished chrome doors was unrecognizable. The woman staring back had sunken eyes, a jaw set like granite, and a heart that had been forged into a blade. When the doors opened, the atmosphere changed. The air here was thin, expensive, and silent. Marcus Thorne's office felt like a fortress built to withstand any siege. Audrey, Marcus Sana said, standing up from his sprawling mahogany desk. He was a man who looked like he had never had a wrinkle in his suit or a moment of doubt in his life. You look like you haven't slept in a week. I haven't, I replied, dropping my bag onto a leather chair. But I'm wide awake, Marcus. My parents threatened me with a filial responsibility lawsuit last night. They want $1 million by Monday, or they're taking me to court. Marcus raised an eyebrow, a slow, predatory smile creeping across his face. Filial responsibility in Massachusetts? It's an archaic statute, rarely enforced unless the parents are truly destitute. Are your parents destitute, Audrey? They're drinking $600 scotch and planning a wedding in the Hamptons, I snapped, pacing the room. But my father claims they have liquidity issues. They're drowning in debt and trying to use my son's life insurance as their personal life raft. Sit down, Marcus commanded, his tone shifting to pure business. If they want to play the impoverished parent card, we let them. But first, we need to dismantle their credibility. Tell me exactly what happened at the club. I recounted the conversation, the sneers, and the invoice they had handed me. When I mentioned the invoice, Marcus's eyes sharpened. You kept it? I pulled the torn pieces of cream stationery from my pocket and laid them on his desk, like a puzzle of human cruelty. I ripped it up in front of them, but I kept the pieces, and I recorded the whole thing on my phone. Marcus leaned back, tapping a silver pen against his chin. The invoice is gold, Audrey. It proves they aren't indigent victims. They're extortionists. But if we want to end this quickly, we don't just defend, we strike. How? I asked, leaning forward. My blood was humming with a dark anticipation. We need to find the rot, Marcus said. People like Harrison Sterling don't just run out of cash. They hide it, or they lose it in ways they don't want the world to see. I'll hire a private forensic accountant to dig into the Sterling family trust. If they're as broke as they claim, there's a trail of bad blood and unpaid debts behind them. I want more than that, I said, my voice dropping an octave. I want them to feel the same humiliation they tried to put me through. I want their social standing to evaporate. Patience, Audrey, Marcus cautioned. The law is a slow burn, but, he paused, his eyes gleaming. There is the matter of the West family. If Julian West Sr. finds out his future in-laws are trying to fund the wedding by suing their grieving daughter for a dead child's insurance, well, that's a conversation he might find enlightening. No, I said, my hand tightening on the armrest. Not yet. I want them to think they're winning. I want them to spend more money they don't have on lawyers. I want them to feel the noose tightening before I pull the lever. I like this version of you, Audrey, Marcus remarked, opening a new file on his computer. But remember, once we start this, there's no going back. You'll be airing every piece of dirty laundry the Sterlings have. They'll come for you with everything they've got. They already took the only thing that mattered to me, I said, looking out the window at the city below. Let them come. I'll turn their Sterling reputation into ash. Then we have work to do, Marcus said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. I'll file a preemptive motion to protect the trust. By the time they file their lawsuit on Monday, we'll have a mountain of evidence that will make a judge want to throw them in jail for fraud, not award them a settlement. I left his office an hour later, but I didn't go home. I drove to a small electronics shop in a part of town where the Sterlings would never be seen. I bought 3 high-end, motion-activated trail cameras, the kind used for hunting. As I sat in my car, looking at the cameras, a dark thought took root in my mind. My parents thought I was weak because I was a mother. They thought my grief made me a target. They had no idea that a mother who has nothing left to lose is the most dangerous predator on the planet. You want my son's money? I whispered to the rearview mirror. I'll give you exactly what you deserve. The air in my apartment felt heavy, thick with the scent of Julian's laundry detergent that I couldn't bring myself to wash away. I sat on the floor of his bedroom, surrounded by Lego sets he'd never finish and books we'd never read again. My phone sat on the rug, vibrating incessantly with frantic calls from Eleanor and Harrison. I didn't answer. I wanted them to stew in their own desperation. Suddenly, a loud, rhythmic pounding echoed through the front door. Not a knock, a demand. I stood up, my muscles aching from tension. I didn't peek through the eye hole. I knew who it was. I flung the door open to find Harrison, his face mottled purple, and Eleanor looking like a disgraced queen in her oversized trench coat. "How dare you!" Harrison roared, stepping into my foyer without an invitation. "Our bank called. All the secondary accounts linked to the Sterling estate have been flagged for investigation. My credit cards were declined at lunch, Audrey, in front of the Wests." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. I felt a cold, jagged satisfaction watching his hands shake. "That's what happens when a forensic accountant starts asking questions, Harrison. Marcus Thorne is very thorough." "You're investigating your own father?" Eleanor gasped, her voice shrill. "We are your family, Audrey. We gave you everything. This is how you repay us? By humiliating us in public?" "Repay you?" I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a dangerous level. "You handed me an invoice for my son's life. You threatened to sue me while his grave was still fresh. You don't get to talk to me about family or repayment. You're nothing but thieves who share my last. You want to talk about stability?" I pulled my phone out and hit play on a recording from the night before. Crying over a plot of dirt won't pay for Tiffany's catering deposit. $2.5 million is a windfall. A silver lining? The sound of their own voices, cold and calculating, filled the room. Eleanor's face went ghostly pale. Harrison's eyes darted around like a trapped animal. That's just the beginning, I said, my voice steady and lethal. I have every text, every voicemail, and every disgusting word you've said since Julian's diagnosis. If you ever threaten my freedom or my reputation again, this recording goes to the Wests, the local news, and every socialite on your contact list. I'll make sure the name Sterling is synonymous with child killer by sunset. You wouldn't, Eleanor whispered, clutching her throat. Try me, I snapped. Get out of my house. Now. This isn't over, Audrey, Harrison hissed, though he backed toward the door. You think you're so smart, but you're just a grieving woman losing her mind. We have friends in high places, judges, lawyers, people who know who we are. You're nothing without the Sterling name. Then I guess I'm nothing, I said, slamming the door so hard the glass panes rattled. I stood in the silence of my foyer, my heart hammering against my ribs. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was disgusted. They weren't going to stop. They were addicts, and their drug was status and money. They would crawl through any sewer to get it. I walked back into Julian's room and picked up the trail cameras I'd bought. I looked at the photo of Julian on his bedside table. His gap-toothed grin, his eyes full of life before the cancer dimmed them. I'm sorry, Julian, I whispered, a single, hot tear finally escaping. I'm sorry they're like this, but I promise you, they will never touch a sin of what was yours. I'll burn it all before I let them win. I spent the next 3 hours studying the layout of the Sterling estate and the cemetery where Julian lay. I knew my parents. I knew their greed wasn't just about bank accounts. It was about physical, tangible wealth. Harrison always bragged that real money was something you could hold. A dark, brilliant plan began to form in my mind. A trap so perfect, so tailored to their specific brand of evil that they wouldn't be able to resist it. I grabbed my keys and a flashlight. I had work to do. If they wanted to treat my son's death like a business transaction, I was going to give them the worst deal of their lives. The air at Silverwood Cemetery was thick, with a freezing, needle-like mist that clung to the ancient oaks. It was nearly midnight, the kind of darkness that swallowed sound and light alike. I moved through the rows of headstones, my heart thumping a steady rhythm of defiance. In my backpack, the 3 trail cameras felt like heavy, metallic secrets. I reached Julian's grave. The fresh earth was mounded slightly, still smelling of rain and finality. I stood there for a long moment, the cold seeping into my marrow, but I didn't feel the chill. I only felt the searing heat of the invoice Tiffany had handed me, a bill for my son's life. They're coming for you, Julian, I whispered into the void. But not the way they think. I worked with a lethal, silent efficiency. I climbed the sturdy limbs of a weeping willow 30 feet from the plot, my fingers numbing as I strapped the first camera to a thick branch. I angled the lens downward, ensuring a perfect, unobstructed view of the grave. The second camera went into a hollowed-out cedar, and the third was camouflaged near the base of a stone angel. These weren't just cameras. They were silent witnesses to the betrayal I was about to provoke. My phone vibrated. A new email from Marcus Thorne. I shielded the screen with my coat. Audrey, the forensic team hit a vein. Your father isn't just having liquidity issues. He's been running a shadow Ponzi scheme within the family trust for years. If he doesn't get a massive infusion of cash, like $2.5 million, the Sterling name is going to be a federal case file by next month. He froze. His head slowly rose, his gaze narrowing into slits. What do you know? I know you need the money or you're going to prison, I said, leaning in and lowering my voice. But I can't give you the insurance check. The bank has flagged it because of the investigation. You bitch! Yeah, he hissed, slamming his fist on the mahogany. You've trapped us! Wait! I held up a hand, feigning a breakdown. I let a few tears fall, easy enough considering the real pain I was bearing. I didn't say the money was in the bank. I didn't trust the courts, Harrison. Before the freeze, I withdrew a massive portion of the payout. $1.5 million in high-grade, untraceable diamonds. I was going to run away. Diamonds. His voice was a greedy whisper, his pupils dilating. Where are they, Audrey? I went crazy last night. I sobbed into my hands. I couldn't stand the thought of you ever touching them. I went to the cemetery. I put them in the one place I thought was sacred. The one place I thought even you wouldn't dare to go. They're in Julian's casket, Harrison, at the bottom, hidden in his favorite blanket. The silence in the room was deafening. I could practically hear the gears turning in his sick, twisted mind. The taboo of the grave was fighting against his ravenous hunger for survival. Greed won. You put them, in the ground? He asked, his voice trembling with a mixture of horror and ravenous hunger. I didn't want anyone to have them, I cried, standing up and rushing toward the door. Just leave me alone, Harrison. Take them if you want them so badly, but never speak to me again. I ran out before he could see the predatory smile spreading across my face. I had given the wolves the scent of blood. Now, all I had to do was wait for the moon to rise. Don't let greed turn you into a monster. Money can be replaced, but your humanity can't. Never trade your soul for quick cash, or you'll end up paying a price you can't afford. Thanks for listening. If you liked this, please like, comment, and subscribe for more. Your support means everything.